Okay, so we'll get going, actually, because we're right on time, 2:30. So anyone else who shows up will just have to catch up with us. I am Kelsey Stanton. I teach geology here, and I also work in the Career Center. So as part of the BFIT program, and I spoke with you a little bit about it, you'll bring me your resumes or cover letters or email them to me, and we'll set up a time and finalize them as part of the steps to go through that program. So hopefully I'll see you guys again. I'm going to talk to you today about transferable skills. These are sometimes called soft skills. And these are some of the things that employers are looking for that don't necessarily come with our training. But because we've all had additional experiences out in life, we actually have quite a few transferable skills. And one of the goals today will be to focus on what those transferable skills are. And so you can even see on this sheet I gave you some actual goals, the tangible outcomes. You'll have some of the transferable skills that you have written out in active voice so that you can use them right away in your resume or your cover letter. I'll describe what active voice is too. You also have some examples of transferable skills that you've written out so that later you can use them in an interview or when you're trying to describe some of your abilities that don't necessarily relate directly to what you've been trained for. And then you also leave with a list of personal traits. Start to think about some of your traits. So, imagine this, and perhaps you've even gone through this before. You train to enter a certain career, and you work there for some amount of time, and then the market just goes kaput, and there aren't any more jobs for what you trained for. In this case, you go back to school, because that's why you guys are here, but it could happen again in the future. And sometimes you actually have transferable skills that will be highly important to a new employer, whether you go back for additional training or not. Because what you're doing right now is preparing you for more than just a specific career. So all of you have a program that you're in, but the whole college experience, in fact, everything that you do, your work experience, your volunteer service experience, even your experience with your family, helps hone these transferable skills. As I mentioned, sometimes they're called soft skills. As opposed to hard skills are what you learn how to do in your program, like wire for electronics or weld, or create curriculum for young children. Those are called hard skills, which I think is kind of funny because sometimes the soft skills are much harder to come by. No one teaches us some of these things. However, many employers are more interested if you have these transferable skills than if you have the skills specific to the job. Sometimes they will hire you with the intention to train you how to do the job, but they want to make sure that you're organized and that you communicate well, that you learn fast, and that you interact with team members, so on and so forth. Those are some of the transferable skills that are really important to employers. So another way to think about these are skills that are needed in every job you may apply for, no matter what your program is. In other words, they are how you function, what you can do that isn't specific to a job but necessary for all jobs. So here are just some examples. Learning is a transferable skill. Some people have better methods of learning than other people, and they're very strong in that transferable skill, for example. Working with technology in general. Learning a specific technology is sometimes a hard skill, but working with technology in general is a transferable skill. Self-management, so this just means prioritizing, making sure that you get deadlines accomplished, and so on. Critical thinking, and this is one of the big ones right now, that employers are really concerned with finding employees that have critical thinking. In other words, here's a problem, how are you going to go about solving that problem without an employer just having to breathe down your neck all the time. Handling information. Numeracy just means dealing with numbers in general. Managing your career, teamworking, and then of course communication is one of the big ones. So these are just some of those examples. Employers like it if you have these because then they don't have to try and train you for these. These are hard to train for. They can spend the time to show you how to use the machinery that you're going to use, but if you have trouble communicating, it's going to be hard for them to spend that time. They're good for the employer, but they're also good for you. The higher your transferable skills are, the more freedom you're going to have on the job. No one's going to have to micromanage you. I have met very few people that like to be micromanaged. Almost no one wants to have their manager breathing down their neck every moment, making sure that they do the right steps. And if you have transferable skills like time management, organization, communication, they're going to feel less likely to micromanage you. You also have less competition in the jobs that you are seeking. Two people may have the same hard skills, so they maybe were trained for the same job, but the one that has more of those transferable skills, the ability to work with others, can manage their time, they're going to be more valuable to the employer in the long run. And then you're just going to have more flexibility in your current job or anytime you're looking for a new position, because you're going to have some skills that no matter what the job is, you can move it around into different kinds of jobs, and that means that you have a little bit of a chance to be picky and say, no, I'm going to go for what I want. So transferable skills are very beneficial to you as well. This is just showing transferable skills in 3 different sets that we could kind of think about them in. And these are, the bottom of these triangles are more prescribed, meaning there's certain ways to do it, and somebody maybe needs to show you the ways to do it. You have less flexibility. And the top of these triangles are more discretionary, meaning that you have more ability to manage your own time and your own career. And so we have data, people, and things. So if you look at some of these, when you have transferable skills down here at this level, like serving, comparing, handling, you can work your way up to building these transferable skills so you're more at this level. It's going to make it better for you. It's going to make it better for the employer. And these are things that are tricky to teach. You could teach someone to compare, but it's much more difficult to teach them how to analyze. Sometimes they pick up on it over time, and that's one of the benefits, is that we have all picked up on a lot of transferable skills over time without someone directly saying, this is what I'm going to teach you. Okay, sometimes we get these two mixed up, transferable skills and traits. Traits are different from transferable skills, but they're also important. We're going to talk about them later today. They describe the style with which you do your transferable skills. So here is an example. This is a statement about transferable skills and traits. I'm good at quickly identifying patterns in data and then efficiently sorting those patterns into useful systems. So the skill, that transferable skill, is what you do, and the trait is how you do. So here you go. The transferable skills are identifying patterns and sorting those patterns into useful systems. And the traits are quickly and efficiently. Now you may think, okay, this is just splitting hairs. However, your trait can be very important. Here's another example. I'm good at carefully identifying patterns in data and then creatively sorting those patterns into useful systems. Same transferable skills, right? But in this case, I am careful and creative, and in this one, I'm quick and efficient. There's a lot of difference between that, right? Being quick at identifying patterns can potentially be very different from carefully identifying patterns. So your traits are also very important. They are the way that you do your transferable skills. You'll note with this page, is on the second page, I actually took a handout directly from a website. And this is called the Partnership for 21st Century Skills Organization. And they have surveyed lots and lots of employers and come up with additional skills that they feel that people trying to enter the workforce will potentially need. And so these are the life and career skills. We have a lot of other skills listed there, but I picked the life and career skills because we're concerned about that part of it. And I printed them off and kind of gave you a rundown here of the main parts of it. So one of those big skills is the ability to adapt and be flexible. And then you'll note that there's some more specifics listed right here. Adapting to various job responsibilities, being flexible with feedback. Okay, so those are important parts of that. Initiative and self-direction. Social and cross-cultural skills. So being able to deal with people in a diverse cultural setting. Productivity and accountability. And then leadership and responsibility. And this breaks down those into some more specific examples that I wanted to be able to provide you so you can think about some of the ways that you do these skills. But my point here is that these skills, these soft skills or transferable skills, are recognized as being very, very important. Employers are complaining that people come into their business without these transferable skills, or they don't know how to apply them to their job. So it's good to think about those. It's also good to think about them now because that's a good way to promote yourself. When you are explaining how you do things, you can add these skills and the traits to give yourself a step up. That's what I say right here. For a resume and a cover letter, your resume is documenting your hard skills. So the experience that you've had, whether it's your work experience or your training experience or both, it's documenting that you have experience doing that. And then your cover letter and some parts of your resume give you a chance to prove your transferable skills. So a lot of the statements I'm going to have you think about today, you can use in your cover letter and parts of your resume to really bolster whatever your hard skills are. So to describe in detail what you're able to do. You maybe can weld, but if you can't finish a welding project on time, it's not going to be as important as if you really have good time management skills and you still have attention to detail. So these are some of those transferable skills that are very important in that sense. I've mentioned this numerous times. Much harder for them to teach you it, so they want you to have it already. Okay, so how do I know what my transferable skills are and which ones I need to improve? This is where we get to actually do some work instead of you guys just listen to me yap. So I'm sure you don't want to listen to me yap. You will notice that you have 3 sets. They look a little bit like this down here, but you have a couple of pages. It says my physical skills, my interpersonal skills, and my mental skills. The physical skills refers to things, the mental skills refers to information, and the interpersonal skills refer to people. So I want you to write down a brief story about something that you did, something that you're proud of. Doesn't have to be anything big though. Something that you have done either in work or your family or volunteer or school, and just keep it a few sentences long. So make sure it's something you're proud of that you did. And when you're finished with that, I want you to look at the skills worksheet. You'll notice underneath some of these transferable skills, there's little boxes that say 1, 2, 3, up to 7. As you finish your story, I want you to reread it and make a checkbox under 1, or make a check in the box 1, under the skills that you used during that story. Okay, you're not going to use all the skills in one story. I mean, that would be a magnificent story if you were able to do all the skills in one of them. But you're just going to think about some of the things that you're proud of. So here's my example. I wrote an extensive research paper for a seminar course that involved multiple drafts throughout a semester. I also gave an oral presentation to the seminar class about the research and put together a PowerPoint to use at the presentation. So that's my story. Really simple, right? Here are some of the skills that I used. Under interpersonal skills, you have to read through these, but the interpersonal skills that I used were making presentations, communicating effectively to a group, designing educational events, and communicating well in writing. So I had to write a paper, I had to tell the group, I had to design a way for them to understand why my research was important. And then for my mental skills, this next page right there, the skills I used were researching, laying out a step-by-step process for achieving a goal. I knew there were certain drafts due throughout the semester. I had to make sure that I had my work done in order to meet those goals. So there are a lot of transferable skills in just this very small story about something I did. So take some time right now, write down a story about something you're proud of. Again, it doesn't have to be big. It could just be that you felt really good about getting a project completed, or you felt good about the presentation you were concerned about giving. So spend a little bit of time, jot it down on this paper if you want, or extra paper. I would like you to write down the skill. So you wrote the story, and now you're identifying what skills you used. So I'd like you to write down the skill as you would use it for a resume or within a cover letter. And this means using active voice. And so here's my example, remember from my story. Here is how I would write down my skill. Ability to communicate effectively to a group as well as create visual and written presentations. Effective with time management and prioritizing. Right? So those were things that my story talked about, and I did research and presented. And then this is how I write it out. I'm using some help from these little boxes. And then you have a word that you're ready, or a phrase that you're ready to just plug right into a resume or cover letter, right? Describing some of your transferable skills. And then if they asked you for an example, you also have an example because you just wrote down your story of your example. So if they say they, meaning the employer, says at an interview, can you give me an example that you were when you were effective with time management and prioritizing? And you just wrote down a story. So hopefully, unless you're occasionally like me, they ask you that and you have this blank, but you have written it down, so it'll be a little bit easier to bring it up to mind. So as you're working through this, write down the skill, mark down your skill, and then write it as you would use it for a resume or within a cover letter. And I'll actually have you, if you already finished with one story, go ahead and write another story. You may have noticed that one story doesn't fill all of the skills, so think of another story, maybe in another part of your life, another facet of your life. And write it down and look at some of the skills and write those active phrases. When I say use active voice instead of passive voice, I mean use lots of verbs in there. And I can come help you with those if you want. So let's work on that for a little bit. Finish the one you're on, maybe start another one. The more stories you can write, the more skills you can start to think about. And you may have noticed that there are a lot of skills that you do in day-to-day life that you didn't necessarily even realize are important. And the more of these stories that you can write down and go through here and start thinking about them, writing out those active voice phrases, the more you will be able to use those for your resumes and cover letter, the more you'll be able to recall them when you want to do an interview with someone and describe the skill set that you know how to do. So it's always good to kind of think about that and break it down into the different parts that you can use. It's also important to know your traits or how you do those skills. So when you can know your personal strengths, it helps you be clear about your other qualities, about those other transferable skills. And so you'll see that this last page says personal strength sheet. And you'll also notice it's the same set of words on either side. One side is for you to do right now, reading through the list and just circling the qualities that you feel you possess. And then this side is for you to take to friend, family member, somebody who knows you pretty well, and then ask them to circle the traits that they feel that you possess. This is good in multiple ways. First of all, it makes you feel really good because you say, oh, really? You think I'm introspective? I never knew that you thought I was that. But it's also good because sometimes we tend to be overly modest with ourselves. We don't tell ourselves what our strengths are. And sometimes those are strengths that our close friends and family members really pinpoint on us. And they don't always tell us. It just doesn't really come up in conversation. So this is a really great way for them to point out that this is one of your strengths and you maybe didn't realize it was, or maybe you're being overly modest with yourself. Thirdly, this is also a chance for them to give you a new story. They may write that you are sensible. And you maybe haven't thought of yourself as sensible, and you say, really, when did I do something that makes you feel like I'm that? And they'll give you an example, and you think, oh, by golly, I didn't even think of that. That's true. That was a time where I was being sensible, and in the meantime, I was also doing these other transferable skills. It gives you a whole nother example to start thinking about transferable skills that you have, you use all the time, and you don't even realize you are. So today, while you're here and working on your stories, also go through this. And then tonight, have somebody who knows you well do the backside. So we are here for a while longer. I mean, we have this room until 4:30. I told him that we wouldn't quite take up the whole 2 hours because you guys would not want to hear me talk that time. So finish some more stories so you start to identify your skills. So at least 3 is good, and up to 7, and analyze each for skills. So if we have this time, try and write 3 stories and come up with those active voice phrases that you can use for your resume or cover letter. Also, circle your personal strengths here, and then tonight have somebody else do the other side and give it back to you, and hopefully have a nice discussion with them about it. Unless one of these things on there that is a strength, but you don't think it's a strength you want to have, then you might have an argument with them. But regardless, you'll at least be thinking about some of the things that you portray in your day-to-day life. So, also, if you have any other questions, I completely neglected to put this in here. I'm Kelsey. And you can email me, just at kstanton wvc.edu. So as you start working on your resume and cover letter, send them to me, and then I'll give you a call or an email, and we'll set up a time to go over them in more detail. So with that, I'm going to turn this off.